Imagine for a moment if former President Trump had actually won the 2020 popular vote over Joe Biden, but lost the Electoral College votes. How do you think he would have responded? I'm betting the word rigged would have been the softest of his responses. And I also have no doubt his supporters would be furious as well. The idea that Trump actually got more votes and wasn't elected president would have been a tough electoral pill for some of his fans to swallow. And in that case, they would also have had a point. On its face, it seems ridiculous. And most Americans feel the same way. A recent Pew poll had nearly 2 of 3 of Americans saying they wanted to do away with the Electoral College. The states are awarded electors based on their populations, but still the less populated states have disproportionately more power, and that was done on purpose. The Electoral College is effectively designed as both a safety mechanism against what James Madison called the tyranny of the majority, but also as a way to give voice and power to more rural states. As a result, there have been a number of times recently when a candidate has lost the popular vote but won the presidency by winning the Electoral College. It happened in 2000 in Bush v. Gore. Most recently, in 2016, when Donald Trump lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes, but received more electoral votes, 304 to 227. What few remember, though, is that in 2004, Democrat John Kerry almost won the electoral vote, even though he was soundly defeated by President Bush in the popular vote. In the end, the electoral count was 286 to 251, but it could have gone to Kerry with a shift of less than 60,000 votes just in Ohio. But the popular vote wasn't even close, as Bush won by over 3 million votes. It just seems absurd that someone can win the national vote by a lot and still lose. And considering that the vast majority of Americans support eliminating it, why can't it get done, or at least be seriously considered? I am certain that if Donald Trump decided it would benefit him, there would be a nationwide movement among his supporters to eliminate it, and they'd have a point. Joining me now is the senior consultant to national popular vote and a lifelong Republican, Patrick Rosenstiel. Thanks a lot for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so what has to happen here to potentially get this changed?
Well, the plan at nationalpopularvote.com, not to get into marketing, it's a state-based plan to elect the president by national popular vote. It guarantees the presidency to the candidate who gets the most popular votes in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. It's been adopted already in 15 states in the District of Columbia. It takes effect when there are a majority of the electoral votes in the agreement. And the truth is what it takes state action, and it takes everybody who believes we should have a national popular vote for president to get their shoulder to the wheel. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. And, increasingly, I think people are coming to the realization that the current system delivers nothing but tribalism and toxicity. To be honest with you, too many courts are picking presidents based on, hair-splitting lawsuits in the battleground state. And meanwhile, 4 out of 5 voters are being ignored because they don't live in a battleground state. So what needs to happen is we need Republicans, Democrats, Independents to put down their jerseys, come together to demand that we have a national popular vote for president, ask their representatives in their state legislature to take action, and we can get it done.
How many states? How many states do you need? Because there's no doubt that some of the states that benefit from the current system aren't going to vote for it, right? So how many do you need?
Well, the truth is we have 195 electoral votes, and our compact takes effect when states with 75 more electoral votes pass the bill. So it could be any number of combinations of states. But the magic number is that we have to have 270 electoral votes pass the bill. Their legislature needs to say we want a national popular vote for president. We want every voter in every state to be politically relevant. We want a better system that advances the principle of one person, one vote. And so it can be any number of combinations of states. We're going to get this done if everybody who believes we should have a campaign in all 50 states to elect an American president, not just a president of the battleground states.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.